Cool. So yeah, basically, I am just a really big fan of developer tools, especially ones that can help me do my job faster. So I always keep like a list going of neat little tricks that I picked up, especially because despite how awesome the Chrome DevTools are, their documentation is always really lacking and really out of date. So there's just some nifty things that I've kind of found over time. Cool. Sweet. So yeah, I'm John Kuperman. I'm JCoop on all the different things. And if you have any questions or want to talk about sweet DevTools tricks afterwards, you can find me on Twitter or GitHub. All right, so the first thing, which I think is awesome, are Chrome always has these experimental features that are hidden behind a flag. So if you want to turn them on in your Chrome browser, you can go to chrome://flags, and then you can just do a search for DevTools. And there's only one here. It's enable DevTools experiments. So you can go ahead and enable that, and it just requires a quick relaunch. After the relaunch goes and comes back up, you can open up the DevTools with one hand. There. Awesome. And you can go to settings, and then you'll have this new flag over here, experiments. Sorry if it's hard to see, but basically there's all this cool stuff that's coming down the pipeline for the DevTools. So there's like accessibility stuff, custom UI themes, CPU throttling, all sorts of awesome stuff like that. So always check here to see what kind of cool stuff is coming down the road. So moving on to the elements panel. One thing that's really neat is scroll into view. I find this all the time. Like I have twitter.com as an option. And when I wrote a lot of these down, I was actually working for Twitter. So that's why they're kind of relevant here. But a lot of times what I'll end up doing is I'll do a query from the console, like grabbing onto an item. So let's say that I did a query and I grab onto this image here. But at the time that I grab onto it, I'm scrolled way up here. So as you can kind of move around, you get this little nice arrow pointing down over there on the screen, which just lets you know that the thing that you're highlighting is down lower than you are. So for like a lot of years, what I would do is I would like scroll a little bit, and then I'd go back. Oh, it's still down. And I like keep scrolling and go down. I don't know if you all do that too, but that's what I did for a really long time. Okay, but so there's actually this really cool thing. If you right-click on the element, you can hit scroll into view, and it'll actually move your viewport to be totally centered over the object. So this is great if you have like any kind of site like Facebook or Twitter that's like a super long list of things and you're trying to find where you are. Next thing is you can show and hide elements. So this same like image, I could go up and maybe grab the whole tweet here. You can just hit the H key and it'll remove it from view like that. So I do this a lot when I'm working on design stuff. Just to keep in mind, this is going to do like visibility hidden, not a display none, right? So the items aren't going to like transform around it. If you wanted to do something like that, you could hit H to show it again and then just hit the delete key and it'll remove it in the way where everything else will condense. And then you can get those back by Command or Control Z to undo the deletion. So you can like hide things with H, remove them with delete, and then undo that with Controls or Command Z. Computed styles, this is like another big one where I was like wasting my time for years and years. So like, I don't know anybody that works on a site where the CSS has gotten totally out of hand. Probably everybody has worked on this, okay. And like sometimes you'll get a ticket that'll be like, where is this gray border coming from? And so then you like pick a thing and then you're like scrolling for hours through this sidebar trying to find all the gray borders and undo all of them. So like one thing that's really neat is you can click this computed tab over here. And what it'll do is it'll show you like after all the CSS, all the specificity, everything is kind of like fought itself out, what the final rules are that apply to an element, like the color is black, the display is black. And you can click down into these things to see not only which rule came out on top as a winner, but if there are different ones arguing, let me see if I can find one here, you can see this I think I can make bigger, yeah. So you can see like here there's two different font families. So you can see the one that lost and then the one on top is the one that won. And then what's really cool from here if you wanted to change it is you can click this nice little arrow and pop back over into the styles tab and then you can edit it here. So that works for like any kind of conflicting style, anything like that. Cool. Next one is break on. This one I absolutely love. So DevTools are really cool to me because they help you, I think, seem like a better developer a lot of the time. You're like relying hard on the tools. But for a while when I was at Twitter, I was moving around from project to project, which is like really hard because you'll get a seemingly simple ticket, but you've never opened that code base before. So you have absolutely no idea, you know, like where it's coming from, anything like that. And so like what I would usually do is, you know, just like kind of start, like look for like a index.js or, you know, some file and start trying to read through like how the routing works, like how did we get there. But oftentimes tickets that come in, especially from users, are visual. So what's really neat to do is if you have something where you know the visual bug, but you don't know where the code is that creates that bug, you can kind of go the other way with these element breakpoints. So for example, I can go back to this like tweet here and I can scroll up to get the whole class of tweet around it. So let's say the bug was when people hit favorite or like or whatever they call it these days, something goes wrong there. And I have no idea where that is in the code, but I know it's something to do with that. So with the tweet highlighted, you can right-click on it, and you can break on, and you get 3 options here. Subtree modifications, which is like anything changing with its children. Attribute modification would be like if you know the element and it's getting like display block, display none, something like that. And then node removal, just listening for when it's removed. So this is like the first time I really used this to save time was there was like a bug where there was a wrong number getting put into a table with JavaScript somewhere, and I was like, I don't know how this code works, but I grabbed that cell of the table and I was like, let me know when your attributes are modified. So let's do for this one subtree modification. And then go back and click this favorite thing. You'll see this stupid thing pops up still, but if you give it a second, because Twitter's really slow, you can see this like background is grayed out, which means a breakpoint has been triggered. There we go. Okay, so it just takes a minute. Let's bear with me, and we'll do some Jeopardy music. But anyway, what it's doing, and if you have a way faster site, what it does is it notices that change in the DOM, it pauses execution, here it goes, it moves you over to the sources tab, which can take a really long time to parse if yours is huge, and it shows you that area of the code. So then I can prettify it here, and I can actually see, like, oh, this is going to take a while again. Note to self, way smaller site next time. But anyway, you can see like right here, like this is like what's being called when you click that heart on a tweet, something like that. So again, can save you a lot of time. Okay, cool. Next thing, force element state. This is another one that for like a super, super, super embarrassing long time, I didn't know that you could do this. And so what I would do is like I'm needing to change like the hover state of a link or something like that. And so I've got my styles out here that I'm changing, and then I like hover over the link. I'm like, oh, it's too bright, and I go back in, and then I like hover over it again, right? Stuff like that. So what you can do, let me go ahead and remove that breakpoint and close this. You can see like the hover state of this little guy is red. So if you wanted to just simulate that hover state, you got to find the exact element it's on. Like I think it might be on this. You can go over here to this :hov. For those of you with older versions of Chrome, it might look like a thumbtack icon instead of this. And then you can go ahead. Let's see if we can find the actual thing that has the hover state on it. There we go. So you can go ahead and you can click hover and it'll show it. This works really great for things like focus, if you want to see if there's a focus ring around an element. So you can go ahead and click those, and then you can go back to messing with your CSS, and it'll keep that state. Material design. This one's sweet because I don't know how to design stuff. This talk was meant to make me seem cool, and I think it's making me seem like I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm good at DevTools, which is pretty true. So this one's sweet. Like I'm not a designer. I don't know how to make things look nice. And Google, for those of you that don't know, open sourced all this like awesome design work under the name Material Design. It's like their color palettes and their sizing rules, all that kind of cool stuff. And so what I use it for a lot, let's see if we can find something. Okay, so like this 3-column whatever, and you can see that it's got a background color of gray. So you can go ahead and you can click inside, not on the text to change it, but actually click on the box, and it opens up this cool color palette thing. What's really neat, though, is you can go to these. This is the hex code, but you can click on these, and you can, this is great. So you can choose material here. So that was like the second ones. And now you have full access to just the Google material colors that you can click through. And what's really neat here, too, I think if you hold down a click, you get all the different shades of it. The thing that's probably cool, I just use material design because that's what I use for all my sites. But what's cool if you're on a project that already has a color palette is instead of material, you can pick page colors. So what the DevTools has done is it's gone out and grabbed all the colors being used on that page. And now you don't have to like refer back. So this is like Twitter green, Twitter pink, Twitter blue, all those kind of things. So yeah, that helps. Changing color format. This is another one where it's like, it seems like every like gig I take, they're like, oh, we do like HSL, or everything's RGBA, or everything's hex, or whatever. And honestly, I only have hex memorized. Those are like the only ones I know. So I just write everything in hex. And then you have a couple different approaches if you want to get the other one out. So let's say we typed this in hex. You can hold shift and click on it, and it'll convert it. Every time you do it, it'll pick from another one. So that changes it to RGB. HSL, things like that. Another way you can get this is by clicking on the box again, and then this one up here, you can just change these. Every time you click it, it converts it to another hex, RGB, HSLA, those kind of things. Yep, so that's a nice way to convert back and forth. All right, the network panel. One thing that's great, and honestly, I think you should just always have it, is your cache disabled. So if you go to the network panel and click disable cache up here. So 2 things to note. The most important one is that disabling cache will only apply when your DevTools are open. So it's not like you don't cache anything ever again. It's only when you have DevTools open. But the real thing here, and I've been guilty of this too, is like, you work on that site. So you're probably going to have all the cacheable cached all the time on that site. So if your job is to do performance and you want to get like a waterfall, network performance, stuff like that, it's really, really a must-have to have the cache disabled so you're not just getting like the special experience for only people that have been there before. Device emulation is pretty cool. This is another one that's changed a lot recently, but right now it looks like a little phone and a tablet. I think it just looked like a phone before, but you can click it. It takes you to this pretty cool screen. So if I just kind of move down these DevTools a little bit, you can simulate all these different popular device sizes. You can rotate them into landscape or horizontal mode, things like that, which is pretty cool. And then one thing that's like worth noting though is that the device emulation is doing more than just screen size for people that just drag their browser. Like you can see here with the device emulated, it's actually throwing a mobile signature. So if I try to go to twitter.com, it'll get redirected to mobile.twitter.com up in the URL bar. So it's a little bit more than just doing screen sizes. You can also just control the height and width, and you can do percentage viewed in. So you can view it as an iPhone but zoomed in, something like that. So yeah, that one's pretty cool. All right, next one, network throttling. This is great. So we have this like kind of weird thing, right, where like all of us, for the most part, work at these like startups that want to like be everywhere in the world, right? Like you reach everyone on the planet or whatever, and like, but then like all the people that build them are like within 50 miles of here on like brand new MacBook Pros on like really, really fast internet connection. So you're like, oh, the site seems fast to me. Why aren't we getting adoption in India? Which is like a conversation I've been in on at like a lot of different companies. So it's really, really nice to be able to do some network throttling. It's not as good as the real thing, but I would really encourage you to go to your site, pick like good 3G or good 2G, and just start clicking around on your site with that network throttling on and see how bad or good your experience is. Another one you might want to do in conjunction with that, if we go back to the experiments, they just added this new one, CPU throttling. So you can simulate a lower energy device, one with worse CPU and bad network conditions, and then find out why you're not getting adoption in those markets. Yeah, I think this one's really important. Cool. Callers and callies. I really like this one. So when you have like a network stack going, like for those of you that have used this network page before, basically you just get this like giant list of assets, right? And you get some other cool things, which I wish I had time to go into, like waterfall. You can like filter down, right? Like only show me JavaScript or only show me XHR requests, things like that. But one really cool thing to do is that you can kind of get a better view of who called who as far as files go. So one way to get it is you can hold, let me see, I think it's the shift button. In the meantime, yeah, you can hold the shift button over one. I'll refresh real quick and see if that helps. And it'll show you like in green. All right, let me try on a smaller site. So on a smaller site, it works a lot better. I think something about Twitter is freezing DevTools. So I can go, this is the actual HTML file. So I can hover over it and I can hit shift. And what it's going to do is it's going to show me in red all the files that this HTML file requested. And then similarly, if I went like to this picture, it'll show me in green what file requested it. So this is really helpful if you have a more complicated app where things are getting called from JavaScript or some CSS file, things like that. You're trying to figure out where the assets are getting called. And sometimes, like I've done a lot of performance optimizations on sites. Sometimes you can do really clever things like, sending down like a little mini bundle of CSS and JavaScript with only what you need, and then sending the rest down async, stuff like that. It's kind of cool to use this screen to tell who's calling who and how things are coming. Screenshots. This is another really cool one on the network tool. I guess I'll just use my site since Twitter's seemingly broken. But one really cool thing that you can do, there's a caveat to this one. You can click over here on network, this little camera, and then when you do a refresh, it'll get screenshots. The caveat, though, is like, and this makes sense if you think about it, since the DevTools are there pinned to the bottom, Chrome's actually not rendering anything but that little slip. So while you have the DevTools open, the screenshots are going to be kind of useless. They're only of what's there. So what you're going to want to do if you're doing screenshots is go here and pop the DevTools up into their own separate window. Then you can just hit Command or Control R to refresh, and now we'll see these screenshots will have a lot more information in them. What's cool about this is like basically what it's doing under the hood is it's every time a repaint is happening, it's grabbing another screenshot of how the page looks. So you can kind of see, let's see, you can click on one and then double click to open it up. So you can see here, right, like the page starts with just a filled in color blue, and then you can see, I think there's probably an animation on these little bottom things. You can see them fading in, and then the text hits. It'll be a lot more interesting in a real site, right, where you'll see like what images, what's happening, what's loading, stuff like that. But screenshots are cool. Just remember you have to pop your DevTools off, otherwise you'll just get the little revealed top clip. Additional sorting, another great one for the network tab, is just so you can sort by the type, right here. You can run regular expressions or filters over here to show only show me ones with tweet in them or timeline or something like that. Man, I'm just gonna give up on this page. But another thing that you can do, I don't know how useful this is, but so if you see over here, the normal sorting areas you have are like name, method, status, type, all that. If you right click on any of those, you'll actually get this gigantic list of other stuff that you can sort by. So like cookies, domain, priority, all sorts of stuff like that. It's kind of interesting to see, especially like giving you insights in how the browsers work, like priority. Browsers will do this kind of magical dance of like, oh, images, like we probably really need those. Like, oh, CSS, we probably really need that. Oh, like this little bit of JavaScript, maybe we don't need that so much. So they'll kind of like move things around. So if you, for example, add priority, you can see like, oh, this JavaScript gets low priority, this font gets highest priority. You just get insight into how the browser is viewing your page. But anyway, there's a bunch of cool stuff that you can sort by there. Cool. Next is the sources panel. Workspaces, so I want to do another talk maybe here sometime soon about using Chrome DevTools as your primary IDE, because you really just can these days, and it's quite awesome. But the idea with workspaces, this works best if you're working with completely local code, like a React app or an Ember app, something like that. What you can do is you can either right-click here and add a folder, or you can just go into your Finder and find whatever workspace, wherever your project is. You can drag it here into sources, and it'll turn it into this like full kind of IDE experience. The great thing once you've dragged a workspace is that changes you make in the DevTools persist to disk. So you can use your DevTools, both changes you make in the sources panel and changes that you make over here in the styles panel will save to disk. So there's no more, like I do this all the time where I get everything looking perfect. And then I'm like, this is great. And I'm like, I have no idea what all I've changed. It's been like 4 hours. So if you have a workspace set up, all that's just saving automatically, which is pretty nice. Show paint rectangles. This one's awesome because it comes with a cute demo, which is koalastothemax.com. So the idea with paint rectangles, this gets more into like performance stuff that we kind of talked about, but basically for those familiar with like how browsers paint screens when things move or change, stuff like that, and oftentimes through sloppy code, you can end up making the browser repaint the entire screen when only a small part changes. So one thing that you can do, so basically from the DevTools, you can hit escape to bring up this console drawer, which I think is skipping ahead to one of my next ones. And then you can hit, it's now called paint flashing. On older versions, it's show paint rectangles. And so what you can do here is it'll show you in green where and what it's re-rendering. So this is like perfect, right? Because what you would not want to see is when you hover over one of these, the whole screen go green. But what you'll probably see a lot on your sites, like if you're doing like loading and unloading iframes, there's a lot of stuff that you're doing accidentally that's causing Chrome to have to throw out the whole layer and re-render everything. So you're just turning on those paint rectangles and then moving around, scrolling around your site. And if you see the whole page going green, that's a really good sign that you're doing a lot of extra painting that you don't need to do. Pretty print, kind of already covered this one, but basically if you're, like let's see, we were on, maybe this page will have one. Anytime that you're in the sources tab and you're like working on any minified code, which is probably going to be every time you're editing production stuff, you can always go ahead and pretty print. This works for JavaScript and CSS, so sometimes it takes a minute. This is all of D3, but it'll blow it back up, and then you can edit this stuff here. One caveat is like if you also do like uglifying, like changing all your variables into single letter names and the stuff like that, there's no way to undo that, but it'll at least expand all the code so you can mess around. Which is pretty neat. Conditional breakpoints. This is like another huge one. So like, okay, another story here would be like, I don't know how many people have been like let's say you have an abstract method that does like all your XHR calls or something like that, and like one of those calls is erroring, and you really want to put a breakpoint in there so you can see what's going on. So you put a breakpoint in that method, and then you refresh, and you have to like click play like 100 times until you get it. Or maybe like what you do instead is you like put an if check in your actual code to be like, if it's going to be a timeline request, then breakpoint here or whatever. But you can actually save a lot of time and do all that stuff with the DevTools. So what you can do is you can go anywhere in any one of your JavaScript files. You can single click to set a breakpoint. The blue means a breakpoint's there, and it'll break next time it gets there. But you can right click on it, and you can add a conditional breakpoint. And so now it's like the breakpoint will only stop if what? And then you can pick any variable, like if factory, I can't type with only one hand, equals foo or whatever. But you get the idea. So you can like put a breakpoint in your code, especially in an area that gets hit a lot. You can right click, set a breakpoint, and then you can say like, okay, only break here when it's this endpoint, or only break here when you're being called from wherever. Anything that you can put into a Boolean expression, you can do there. XHR breakpoints, another awesome one. So in a very similar fashion, we'll go ahead and remove this breakpoint. You can, from the sources tab, look over here, and you can drop down XHR breakpoints. And basically what you can do is you can say, okay, only break when we do an AJAX request and the URL contains, and then you can put a string in here. So like before we were doing like the Falcor stuff, it would work really nicely. You could be like, okay, break on an AJAX request, but only when it contains titles 0 or something like that, right? And then it would only break on that request. That's another time saver. Blackboxing scripts, another one that I just did wrong kind of forever. So like, how many people use the debugger, like set breakpoints sometimes, check them out? Okay, cool, a good amount of you. How many people, when they're looking at the call stack, are like totally overwhelmed with like jQuery, Backbone, Lodash, React, whatever it is. So like the problem, right, is that chances are it's not a problem in their scripts, in those third-party libraries you're using. It's probably a problem in one of your scripts. So if we set just some random breakpoint, I don't know if I'll get lucky here or not, but basically what you can do, let me set a breakpoint on like Twitter or something like that. What you can do is you can, when you're looking at the call stack, you can, I'm getting pretty good at opening the DevTools with one hand. Let's hope that gets hit. Okay, that's not gonna get hit. Okay, so let's walk through this actually. We can do, oh, maybe it did. Basically what you can do, okay, so you've got all these things over here. And okay, so Twitter has a lot of just its own code, but I imagine here if you're like a startup or something like that, you might see a lot of libraries in here, React, Lodash, anything like that. So what you can do on any one of them, and this is for those that haven't seen it before, when a breakpoint triggers, this whole area over here changes, and it lets you do things like spy on variables. You can type in a variable name. It also shows you the call stack of how it got here, right? So this like send request where I put my breakpoint came all the way from like this onReady state change, this onload function. But what you can do that's really cool is, let's say init was like lodash.js, like not our library. You can right click on it and you can black box the script. And what that means is that the debugger is no longer going to stop there. So if you're step through debugging, it'll skip your library files. And similarly, the next time you set a debugger, the call stack is just going to minify all those library calls. So you won't have to see those. Yeah.
Is like boxing working when element breakpoint?
Yeah, it'll work on element breakpoints as well. But it won't shorten your call stack until the next time around. There's also, if you just go into settings, you can set, so right now blackboxing will only work on that site, right? It's like per site, and it's per session. When you close Chrome, you'll lose them. But you can go into the settings, and there's a blackboxing area. Let me show you. Blackboxing here. So any ones that you put in here will just be permanently blackboxed, right? So these are kind of old. This is like from my Twitter days, and then jQuery and underscore. Like those are just things that I don't ever want you to stop in there. One day I'll make a terrible underscore contributor. So I can't find the bug anywhere. But you can put these global ones in here, which is pretty nice. Multiple cursors. So if you're ever editing back over in the sources tab, it's actually really cool. That's why I want to do a talk on using it as an IDE. But you can be typing in here, and you get a lot of the functionality you would expect from like your Sublime or Atom or whatever. So you can use controller command to set a bunch of multiple cursors and things like that. You can also do some like really cool stuff with like TypeScript and things like that. I'd really like to come back and do a full talk on it. But you can do most of the things that you can do in your IDE right in Chrome DevTools, which is pretty neat. Pause on all exceptions is another great one that just to run your app through or whatever. So when you're on the sources tab, you can set your manual breakpoints, then you can step through them. Or you can go on here and click pause on all exceptions and refresh the app. And so anytime anything in JavaScript throws, it'll pause for you there. It's a lot of noise a lot of times because libraries will be throwing and catching things, but sometimes it's just worth checking out with your app. And then if you ever get overwhelmed like I do, you can just deactivate all breakpoints and go back to like using your app. All right, to the timeline panel. One thing that's really cool, that I use this all the time for diagnosing memory leaks, but you can actually, I say force garbage collection. You can request garbage collection from the browser. So when you're over in the timeline panel, taking a look at like, let's start a little timeline, and I'll like move back and move forward, and then I'll stop my little timeline. But one thing that you could do is at any time, like So here's a whole lot of information. If you want to come to my forward class, we'll do all sorts of memory profiling stuff in a few weeks here. But there's a little trash can over here. So if you're worried that you have a memory leak, one thing that you can do is you can hit record and let it go for a minute. Then you can hit garbage collect and then let it go for a minute and then hit stop. And what you should see, right, is when the garbage is collected, you should see that kind of drop in memory. And so you can do some like pretty cool stuff with seeing whether or not you have a leak on your page. Next one is the profiles panel. This one's pretty neat too, kind of getting a little bit deeper into the JavaScript of it all, but you can record JavaScript profiles, and then like kind of similarly, I could go do some stuff if I wanted to. Okay, so not a lot happening here, but if you had a real app, you can imagine there'd be all sorts of cool stuff. So this will show you, it's got a couple of different charts, but you can do something like, you can see self-time here. So you can sort by self-time or total time. For those that have done any kind of debugging before, like, you know, as functions wrap each other, like if you have a little function that does nothing but calls this guy, and then this guy calls this one, and this one does a lot of work, the total time will be really high from that parent function, but the self-time will be really low because it doesn't do much. So you can sort by self-time, and you can see what the most expensive function on your page is. Since there's nothing going on, it's just an HTML slideshow idling. And the ones in parentheses are system processes. That's like the rendering engine, so program and idle. But my most expensive function here is get computed slide size, which is really not much of a surprise because when you're doing that kind of DOM invalidation reading and writing. But you can go to any of your apps, run a profile, organize by self-time, and see what the most expensive functions that you have are. Finding memory leaks, another cool one. This one's actually not in DEVTOOLS, but it's DevTool adjacent. So when you're on all these different tabs, you can go over here to your Chrome settings. You can go to More Tools. You can go to Task Manager. So this is a separate task manager that just monitors your Chrome processes. And then it shows things, but you can right-click here and you can add JavaScript memory as a section. And now we can sort by JavaScript memory, and we can see each one of our tabs and how much JavaScript memory it's taking up. So if this number is just growing and growing while you're idling on a page, you have a memory leak. All right, and the console panel. One thing that's cool is you can, I see kind of people struggling with this sometimes, but when you're on console, you can multi-line code with Shift-Enter, just like you can in like Bash or something like that. So you could like function. Sorry if you can't see. Oh, look at me. I console log high a lot. Not as easy as it looks with a microphone. Anyway, so you can do a multi-line function by just hitting Shift-Enter, so you can run a bunch of stuff that way. You can clear your history with Command or Control-K. Just clear all that history up. Similarly, you can do things like you can preserve the log. I see people, I used to struggle with this all the time too, but like sometimes a page refresh is making it like almost impossible for you to debug something because it's like, oh, there's a problem on my form submit, and you like click form submit and then it refreshes the page so you lose your whole console history or whatever. But preserve log will ignore those refreshes and just keep a log going of all your different requests. Similarly, you can clear it with Command K. 0 and 1, these are pretty fun. I don't know how useful they are. I hope you'll find them useful. Let me dock this again. So if you're like on a page in the Elements panel and you click on like this div class reveal, you go into console and you type in $0 and it'll give you that class reveal, the last selected item that you have. And then kind of a neat like partner of that is that if I go from reveal and I click on the HTML tag, and I go back into console, as you'd expect, $0 gives me that HTML tag. Now $1 gives me that reveal. So it'll kind of store them. So you can kind of click on the thing and then bring it into console and mess with it, right? Similarly, if you're running a bunch of code in your console and you want to capture the return value of that code, you can like run any code you want. Let's pretend that's some awesome function. And then you can use $_underscore, it'll capture either the last selected thing if no code's been run or the last returned value. So if you're doing like, you know, select the list and count the number and give me the length, then you're like, oh, I kind of wanted to do more operations on that. You can just use $_, which will give you that return value, and then, you know, to uppercase or whatever creative thing you want to do. Cool. Extras. I use this sometimes when I'm doing designy stuff. It's a little bit temperamental, so you can go to settings, and I think it's just under preferences. Yeah, show rulers here. It's the reason I say it's temperamental because you have to like, yeah, see, it's not even. I should take this one out of this slide. Anyway, so sometimes, I don't know what it is. I can't get it to go all the time, but sometimes it'll show these nice little semi-transparent rulers on the top. Either way, a thing that's worth noting is that when DevTools are open and you resize the screen, it'll always show you the height and width in the top right over there. Console drawer, I've been using this one a lot without really explaining it, but while you're on any other tab, like you're on Elements, you can always hit Escape to bring up the console drawer, so you can have Elements open and console over here. You can hit Escape again to hide it. Oh yeah, my rulers showed up. I didn't even notice. Oh, but yeah, but man, sometimes. Okay. Let's go. The rulers only show up when you have something hovered in Elements. That's weird, but cool. Cheers to that. So that one's pretty neat. The console drawer a lot. You can use hotkeys to switch between panels. I try to use my keyboard or my mouse as little as possible. So you can, I think it's like Command and then the brackets, kind of similar to some other programs. So you can like, or if you're on Windows or Linux, Control in the brackets, so you can see. Yeah, so I can cycle through the tabs that way. I don't know. That one's kind of useful. Switch between panels. Cool. Yeah, I don't know. I hope I had time. Yep, again, I'm Jay Coop. I hope you appreciated some of those tips. And yeah, if you want to talk about any cool stuff afterwards, be happy to. Thanks.
Thank you. I love that.